Welcome to the 2021 Pac-12 Football Media Day. I want to start by thanking our student athletes for being here today and for representing their teammates. What they do on a day-to-day basis to balance both their athletic and academic obligations is remarkable. I also want to thank and welcome our head football coaches, athletic directors, our corporate partners, the Rose Bowl, our other Rose Bowl partners, and our friends from the College Football Playoff. I cannot mention our head coaches without taking a moment to honor the recent loss of UCLA football coach Terry Donahue, the all-time winningest coach in Pac-12 football history, and a great and humble man who reflected the best values of our conference. Finally, I want to thank the members of the media that have joined us today in person. We greatly appreciate all you do to tell the stories of the Pac-12 to our fans. I want to begin my remarks today by reiterating the Pac-12's ongoing commitment to student athletes. The Pac-12 has been a leader in providing for continuing education, improved health care, guaranteed scholarships, and a liberalized transfer rule for student athletes. The Pac-12 was also the first conference to include student athletes in our governance structure. This commitment to put student athletes first comes directly from our presidents and chancellors. With their guidance, we will continue to strive to be the leading conference in supporting student athletes. I also want to take a moment to emphasize that the health and safety of our student athletes and all those connected to Pac-12, including our fans, will continue to be a priority in light of the continued threat from COVID-19. As a conference, 9 of our 12 schools are requiring vaccinations for all students, and we have been strongly encouraging everyone to get vaccinated, including through educational webinars and public service announcements. We plan to have safety protocols in place that include regular testing for any student athlete who is unvaccinated, as well as for anyone, vaccinated or unvaccinated, who is symptomatic. 33 days out from our first football game, 2/3 of our teams have already achieved more than 80% of their players being vaccinated, and half of those teams are above 90%. We're very proud of that. Let's now talk about something much more fun, athletic success. As I mentioned in my May press conference, going forward, the Pac-12 will be hyper-focused on greater success in football and men's basketball. It's not a secret that these are the two most impactful sports, and that revenue generated from football and men's basketball often funds our overall athletic programs. In partnership with our schools, the conference will take the steps necessary to give our student athletes the best possible opportunities to win titles in these two sports. Before we talk about our longer-term football prospects, let's start by focusing on this season. We have nationally recognized coaches, many with long track records of success. We have some of the best student athletes in the country that are consistently selected in the first few rounds of the NFL draft. And we have strong returning athletes and incoming recruits. The talent returning to the Pac-12 in 2021 is truly elite. 16 of our top 25 offensive players and 15 of our top 22 defensive players from 2020 are returning to the conference. Our returning players include 2 stars who were featured in last year's Pac-12 Football Championship game. The top defensive player in all of college football is Oregon's Kayvon Thibodeau, and USC's Keaton Slovis is one of the nation's top returning quarterbacks. The Pac-12 also had 2 of the top 7 recruiting classes this year, and our schools tapped into the transfer portal to bring in experienced talent, including, importantly, 14 players coming back to their West Coast roots after playing for Power 5 schools outside the Pac-12 footprint in 2020. The Pac-12 will play 83% of our total games against Power 5 schools, the second highest among any Power 5 conference. These games include matchups with some of the top programs in college football, including LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas A&M, and Notre Dame. Finally, we have a new home for our football championship game. And I can't think of a better showcase for our two teams than Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas on December 3rd. I know that our student athletes, fans, and media are absolutely going to love the experience of Allegiant Stadium and Las Vegas. Tickets to our football championship game go on sale to the general public at 10 a.m. today. As a football conference, the Pac-12 has always been known for the excitement of our play, particularly at the skilled positions. Two great examples are the reigning NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers, and the NFL Rookie of the Year, Justin Herbert. We've also been known for the strength of our entire league. Unlike conferences with a single dominant team, we often have multiple top teams and significant depth in the conference and a 9-game conference schedule. While this has led to greater parity, it has historically hurt us in the rankings, and it has certainly cost us CFP invitations. I want to be 100% clear that going forward, the Pac-12 Conference will make all of our football-related decisions with the combined goals of optimizing CFP invitations and winning national championships. This is a decision fully supported by all 12 of our athletic directors. The great news is that now we have in place at the conference the team to execute on these goals. As you all know, last year we hired Senior Associate Commissioner for Football Operations, Merton Hanks, to run football for the conference. Merton is an overachiever. He was a 5th-round draft pick of the San Francisco 49ers, who went on to make 4 Pro Bowls and win a Super Bowl during his 9-year NFL career. Merton also spent time at Conference USA and as the VP of Operations for the NFL. Today we are announcing the hiring of Shauna Brown to work as Associate Commissioner of Football Operations for Merton. Shauna comes to us from Conference USA and has also spent portions of her career at the NCAA, the America East Conference, the Mid-American Conference, and the Miami Dolphins. Her experience and knowledge will be invaluable. The other great news is that we already have a framework for success in achieving our football goals. Several years ago, the conference formed a men's basketball strategic working group. This was a multi-year effort that reviewed all basketball decisions with the goal of increasing the Pac-12's NCAA tournament bids, Final Four appearances, and eventually national championships. The fruits of that work began to appear this past season. Today we are announcing the formation of a football strategic working group led by Merton. The football group will include our football head coaches and our ADs. The mandate for this group is simple: recommend changes to our football program with the goal of optimizing for CFP invitations and winning championships. Consistent with my meeting with our ADs in Las Vegas, I can confirm that every decision the conference makes related to football is on the table for discussion. We will look at our conference schedules, including the number of conference games that we play and the start time of each game. We will look at our non-conference scheduling. We will evaluate whether having divisions does or does not make sense. We will work collectively to keep our very best recruits in our markets and to market our league to recruits everywhere. The football working group will begin meeting immediately and provide regular updates and recommendations to me and our board. Alongside this focus, the Pac-12 will continue to be the Conference of Champions and continue to invest in the success of all sports. With the Summer Olympics underway in Tokyo, we can once again expect to see the Pac-12's excellence in these sports on full display. The Pac-12 sent more than 300 Olympians to these games across 28 sports and representing all 12 of our universities and 52 countries. Over 60% of these athletes are women. In addition to our athletes, 8 Pac-12 coaches are head coaches of Olympic teams. At the last Summer Olympics in Rio in 2016, Pac-12 affiliated athletes won 55 total medals in 12 sports. If the conference had been a country, it would have finished 5th among all countries in the medal count. As a conference, we dominate Olympic and women's sports. In fact, the Pac-12 has won the most, or tied for the most, NCAA titles for 56 of the last 60 years, including in each of the last 16 seasons. This is an achievement we are proud of and will not walk away from, even as we increase our focus on football and men's basketball. Before I conclude my remarks, I'd like to quickly address some of the significant recent developments related to college athletics. If the media reports turn out to be true, we believe the move by Texas and Oklahoma from the Big 12 to the SEC strengthens our unique position as the only Power 5 conference with teams in the Mountain and Pacific time zones. We have a stable, highly successful, and well-positioned membership with a high bar to entry. Given our investments in football and men's basketball and our historic domination of other sports, we do not think expansion is required to continue to compete and thrive. That said, the fallout from Texas and Oklahoma gives us an opportunity to once again consider expansion, and we have already had significant inbound interest from many schools. We will work with our presidents and chancellors to evaluate these opportunities. We expect these decisions to take some time, and we will not be sharing any further information today about ongoing expansion discussions. With respect to the Alston case, recently decided by the Supreme Court, I want to be on the record that we completely agree with the majority's affirmation that college sports is a special and distinct pursuit. And as college students, our student athletes should be eligible to receive any and all legitimate educational benefits. That said, we must continue to defend the collegiate model. It is likely that some will see the decision in Alston, and particularly the language of the single concurring opinion, as an invitation to attack the very foundation of the collegiate model. College athletes are students at educational institutions, in the case of the Pac-12, at some of the finest universities in the world. Introducing unfettered professional practices into college sports will undermine our educational mission and will have many unintended negative consequences, especially for athletes competing in women's and Olympic sports. The Pac-12 is also in favor of student athletes being able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, and we welcome the changes that were implemented by the NCAA on July 1st. We support the opportunity of our athletes to monetize their personal brands, just as other students on campus are able to build and market their own intellectual property. I want to announce today that the Pac-12 networks will be launching a new licensing program to provide student athletes highlights and content to any company that is working with any of our Pac-12 student athletes in connection with their NIL. This initiative, which leverages our network's rights and capabilities, will be one of many that we plan to implement to support our Pac-12 student athletes in the new NIL landscape. Although we support legitimate NIL, we also support a bright line against any payments designed to induce a player to join a specific school or any payments that resemble pay for play. These are non-negotiables, and we must continue to work with Congress to draft a federal law that clearly establishes this line to protect what is distinct about college sports and the integrity of our competitions. I believe the implementation of NIL can be a significant competitive advantage for our Pac-12 schools. Our schools sit in some of the largest and most desirable media markets in the world, and many of our prominent alumni have started or currently run some of the biggest and most important companies in the world. Speaking of desirable media markets, we know that the single biggest opportunity that the conference has over time to support our schools and student athletes is to strike the right balance between revenue, national exposure, and competitive advantage in our next set of media rights deals. This is a difficult balancing act, but in a few years, thanks to the foresight of our presidents and chancellors, we will be in a unique and enviable position. Unlike many other conferences, we still own all of our media rights, and this gives us unlimited flexibility in how to structure new deals beginning in 2024. In fact, we believe our media rights will be even more valuable if there is further consolidation among the FBS conferences in the next 2 to 3 years. Given the proliferation of bundled media services and the unique and very limited nature of live sports, I believe we will have a large and diverse group of bidders for our media rights. Finally, as I have mentioned before, the Pac-12 is in favor of CFP expansion. We believe allowing more teams and athletes to compete for a national championship is a win for the Pac-12 and for our football players. We appreciate the work that was done to put forward the initial 12-team proposal. There's much about the proposal that we like, but the Pac-12 and the other conferences that were not part of the 2-year process to create the proposal will need some time to collect feedback from our stakeholders and identify any issues that need addressing. As we identify these issues, we will work collaboratively with our CFP partners to recommend an expansion plan that increases access, takes into account the best interests of our student athletes, and also preserves the rich traditions of college football. That concludes my prepared remarks.